Welcome back to Passion About Music Education, a channel dedicated to you, the music educator. Today I'm going to talk about how to cope with the demands of your very stressful position when you're living with somebody who is depressed. I wanted to dive into this topic in detail with you today because I think it's something that as educators we don't really talk about. We don't talk about how to cope with somebody in our life who is severely depressed and how we come in and be that cheerful, bubbly, enthusiastic music educator. Because actually, in truth, that depression particularly impacts our own personal well-being. When women are depressed, they tend to bring it inwards. They tend to go very quiet. They tend to be blaming on themselves. Whereas for men, they tend to push their depression outwards, and it comes out in a form of anger, a gruffness. And I know that's a very generalisation, but that is generally what's happening. So you might find yourself in a situation where things aren't quite as you would hope them to be, where you're not feeling quite at peace and peace at home. And it might not be because of you, it might be because you're living with a quietly depressed partner. So what do we do when we suddenly make that realisation that there is depression within our household? Well, the first thing you have to understand, it's not your fault. It's not yours to carry and it's not yours to solve. And that's a really, really hard lesson, because if you're a teacher, you're always wanting to help and support your students, your colleagues, people that you love and care about. But in terms of a depressed person, you can't help them. And that sounds quite depressing really in itself, that you can't help them, but they have to work through their problems themselves. And whether you nag them to go and get counselling, they will only do it when they're ready. And so what can you do? Well, the main thing is to ensure that you are actually looking after yourself. And you will hear this expression, put your own life mask on before helping others. It sounds quite patronising, because you're like, well, I'm okay, I don't need to look after myself, I need to look after the family, the children, to deal with the depressed partner. In reality, actually, it's very, very easy to absorb other people's depression without you really realising it. Their negative mindset is very hard not to absorb on a daily basis, particularly if you're working in a stressful school, or you're working in a culture that maybe isn't that pleasant, isn't that supportive, isn't that positive. And sadly, there are a lot of school environments that are that situation. And I see you talking about it daily on feeds, on many social media platforms. So here are a few tips. First of all, try not to take it personally. You didn't do anything wrong. Were you the most happy, vibrant person in the world, bringing joy and laughter into the house? Maybe not. But that is reality. Sometimes we're just tired. You cannot take the blame for another person's depression. Generally, depression comes from a lack of growth, a lack of self-care, a lack of dealing with generally unresolved traumas. They're not your traumas to fix. You can be supportive and loving and caring, but you can't fix them. So you do have to look after yourself. How do you look after yourself? Well, you have to work on ensuring that you eat well, sleep well, get exercise, get fresh air, and do those things that are important. We call them the pies, which is looking after your physical, emotional, intellectual, spiritual self. When was the last time you took some time to do that self-care? Have a bubble bath, paint your nails, read a book, go take the dog for a walk. That calmness for you. And it's not taking the dog for the walk with the kids so they get fresh air to give your partner peace and quiet. Sometimes it's just you going out for a walk on your own to clear your own mind, to get out of that constant chat that goes on in our head. So you really have to, in those moments, and we all find ourselves in a position where people around us are in a very negative mindset, to really focus on not absorbing that, and to be looking after ourselves by looking after our well-being. Dig into your friendship circle, dig into your family, and get out and about and do fun things, plan fun activities. You often find a depressed person will instantly say no to going out, but if you continue to do it and don't deprive yourself, the chances are they will join you and they will come along. And if they don't, that's fine. You go out to the cinema, you go out for dinner, you go and see your friends, you go for that coffee, you go for that walk, because your self-care, your well-being is super important, particularly when you're dealing with stress every day at work. The other thing to do is to make sure that you are unpacking your own stress. And you might find that living in this situation is incredibly stressful, and you're sort of not sleeping well and taking that into work and bringing it back home from work. So there are some activities you can do to help with that. First of all, meditation. That opportunity to put some meditation music on or do a guided meditation every day to help you capture those constant thoughts that are going in your mind. And it's not to ignore them or to ignore any of your emotions. You're entitled to feel them, but to understand whether they're serving you, whether they're making you feel happy and your best version of yourself, or whether they're actually impacting your mental health. Other activity is to journal, to write down your thoughts, get out your feelings, and into that journal every day to re-engage with your goals. What is it that you're striving for? What is it that you want to achieve for yourself? Not for your family, not for your career, not for your students you teach, but what is it that makes you happy? What gives you passion? What lights you up? What makes you excited? Do more of that. Your aura will become positive. You will become more positive. You'll be able to cope with the challenges of being around negative people. The other is, of course, eating well, sleeping well, and we hear it all the time. We're not so good at doing it, but when you are dealing with depression, whether it's your own or somebody else's within the household, then you really do need to look after your sleep, particularly if you're teaching children, because the chances are you'll get really stressed and really tired, and then you'll snap at them and be grumpy. But situations that you go, gosh, I'm really annoyed today, I shouted at that child and I didn't mean to, and why did I shout at them? And it's generally because we need somewhere to release that frustration, and it's not right to do it on children, but at times you will, and we have to forgive ourselves for that, but we have to look at healthier ways of managing that. So sleep, eating, exercise, and these are all very obvious, and we've been hearing them a lot over the last few years, but truthfully the most important part about living with a depressed person is the fact it will eventually change. It's not permanent, and it's really not a reflection of you. You do have to let go of control. You have to let go of the fear of what will happen, and you will have to just take one day at a time and try to remember that you are important in your own journey, in your own story, and you're not second in their story. And however much you care and love for that person, you have to still love and care for yourself. You still have to show self-love every day. And that's easy to forget when you're trying to care for other people. We get to put ourselves right at that bottom of that pile, particularly as educators, where there's so much pressure on us to constantly be serving our community, our students, and working at such a high demand, particularly in these challenging times, to forget about ourselves and what we need, and what makes us happy and gives us passion. So I hope this video has given you some ideas if you're living with a depressed person. And please remember, if you need extra help, go and get that therapy, go and get that counselling for you, go and find those networks and support groups, because it's important that you talk about it too. I hope this video has been helpful, and I look forward to seeing you again on the channel very soon. My name's Rachel Hardman, and this is Passionate About Music Education.